us on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys?
We are doing well. So, it's you've had a little bit longer weekend since the Nebraska game with that Friday kick. I guess just 2 days out, how have you processed that win that was certainly ugly at times, especially in the second half, but at the end of the day is a conference road win, which have been few and far between for Nebraska recently?
Yeah, I thought Nebraska's defense did a really good job of containing Illinois' potential explosiveness. Obviously, Illinois hit a few. They hit a long pass. They hit a swing pass. Williams on the first drive, but they did a nice job. Nebraska's defense did a really good job of containing what Illinois could do. And I think there's a lot going on with Illinois right now in terms of their offense. Brett Bielema not on the same page with his offensive coordinator. Anybody who probably many people did watch Brett Bielema's post-game press conference, but there's a lot of frustration there. I think there's just a lot of sense of the offense isn't really running the way that Bielema wants, and they're going to have to think about what they're doing because Nebraska was able to deter Illinois from running the ball very early in the game, and that, I thought that was strange. And Illinois doesn't have enough of a passing game, good enough offensive line to just be able to sit back there 47 times. They threw it 47 times. They probably called 50 to 52 passing plays. That's a lot, and it didn't add up to much. And so I thought Nebraska's defense did a really good job of containing Illinois, and then you got the special teams play. When you get plays like that, and I know it wasn't specifically a touchdown, but it led to a touchdown, almost always you win the game.
Yeah.
Almost always. If you get a touchdown that's related to special teams, you usually don't lose. It's one of those deals where it pisses off the other team so much. It's so demoralizing, and in a lot of cases, coaches will go back and go, so stupid that it creates just this sense of frustration. And I think that play kind of sealed the game. Now, Illinois had plenty of chances in the second half, and Nebraska should have won the game by 30. Didn't. But that play, Grant Taggy's hustle and all the rest, that sinks you. And Nebraska was able to capitalize, and I think that was kind of the game. They got some things done in the special teams phase that helped, and they were able to drive it home. Wasn't a pretty game on offense, but didn't have to.
Last week, we heard Coach Rhule challenge his team a lot. And, we heard in the Monday press conference following the Michigan game, we have to have our guys show up. Me and Robbie were talking about this a little bit earlier. It felt like some specific guys kind of rose to that challenge. Just names we heard earlier in the season be called a lot more on Friday. Who impressed you on Friday, or who do you think kind of answered that call for Coach Rhule?
Bullock,
yeah,
Henrich. Isaac Gifford had maybe his best game, and Gifford had the play against Michigan, and I don't know. I mean, he's probably not going to forget it because that's the kind of guy he is. But the middle of their defense, Hutmacher played pretty well against Michigan, but he had a good game. Some of their edge rushers, I thought Princewell had a good game. Jamari Butler had a good game. So mostly guys on the defense.
Yeah,
I don't know that Nebraska played that poorly on offense against Michigan. There's certainly things that, hindsight being 2020 again, maybe you do a few things differently in that game. I thought they abandoned the run quickly, but I thought Harburg played okay against Michigan, and I thought he played okay at times against Illinois. I think especially in the first half, he did good things. Second half, I think there was a little bit of unfocus there, whether it was play calling or it was some of his decision making, the crispness of the execution. Again, Nebraska has a tendency when they either get way behind or they feel like they've got a lead to start okay, let's grind clock, let's put this thing in our back pocket, let's save some of our cool stuff for another day. And Nebraska ran a lot of the same plays. I mean, they might have run them out of different formations, but they were running that cross buck play pretty consistently there. And so, you got to finish the game. I would have liked to have seen a couple throws to the end zone to finish it off and get out of there. But I thought the defense responded really, really well. And that's the kind of unit that's going to respond to a really physical practice.
Yeah.
My sense of the offense is they didn't necessarily love that practice on Sunday at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think they got a lot. I'm not sure they got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
But the defense did, and
Yeah.
I think that's where they need to build their culture.
Yeah.
Sam, could I make the argument? You mentioned it would have been nice if they had taken a couple shots at the end zone and kind of spread this thing out a little bit further. Can I make the argument to you that it was better for their long-term development to win one that stayed ugly?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's it might have been better for the defense. Yeah, in the sense that, the defense had to keep going out there and dealing with the adverse conditions of watching the offense make that mistake over and over. For sure. Yeah. And they're probably going to face that again. They obviously face that circumstance against Minnesota and lost. And they face that circumstance against Illinois and won. So there's a good chance they're going to face that circumstance again somewhere down the line, whether it's Purdue or it's Iowa, Michigan State, or Maryland. Somewhere in there, Nebraska's going to have a lead. They're going to have to close it out. I think you want your offense to do a little bit more there. And again, I mean, they're just a little bit limited in the things that they can do. At the end of the day, the option has its limits. There's things that you can get done in the option game. I think we saw some of those things, but that's an offense that's really dependent on timing and consistency and doing it for years on end. And Nebraska just doesn't have that body of knowledge. So that's going to be a curveball, or it's not a gimmick play, but sort of the side dish. The main dish is that they got to try to run the ball with power, and they're still in a journey there, and it's probably going to be a journey all season long.
It felt like this game was a response game for both teams just because of the losses both were coming off of. And when we talked to some writers from Illinois last week, they were saying that they were having a lot of internal conversations, tough conversations at Illinois. So it's kind of a matter of which team was going to be able to respond the best this past weekend. From your observation, did it feel like the entire game from the start? I mean, down on the field, it just felt like Nebraska had a different sense of urgency and fire compared to some past seasons after coming off a tough loss. Like, did that feel like a new thing to see from the Nebraska team to be so ready to be fired up and kind of follow up with the action or the words we'd heard them speak last week, like being so angry?
Yeah, I think that certainly there was a kind of you could push that button once.
Yeah.
The button they pushed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the hope is that when you push it, there's a response, and then you don't do it again, and because you don't need to.
Yeah.
It either works or it doesn't, and it worked. And I think the message was designed to be sent to the defense, and I think the message was received. And that group is increasing in its pride. It's been a long time, Avery, since Nebraska has really decided to lean on its defense, really since the Bo Pelini era. They just haven't been that kind of program.
Yeah.
And so it's been a while since they've really wanted to say the defense is what's going to win us this football game. And I think you can always appeal to the emotional pride of defenders. Offense is a little trickier. It's execution. It's play calling. It's the right moment at the right time. There's a thinking component to it that any quarterback's got to grow into. You wouldn't expect Harvard to know all the things that need to be done over the course of 4 hours. But on defense, you can get a lot done by playing really hard and running to the ball and hitting violently. And I think Nebraska, so long as it retains that identity, and they're playing a bunch of guys, which motivates people. When they get on Rhule Van Poppel plays 4 plays, but one of his 4 plays is one of the most important plays of the game. Anytime you can play a bunch of guys and you can motivate them by, this may be the play that determines this game, the 4 plays that you're on the field, I think you're starting from a good place. Now, to go to the next level, which anytime we do this, we look at what just happened, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in 3 years, what's going to happen in 5 years. To get to the next level, especially with Oregon and Washington coming in the league, and USC and UCLA, you have to go for it. You have to find a way, because you put Nebraska's hard-working defense on a field against Oregon or USC, they're not going to hold that of those teams to 7 points. So you've got to find a way to put points on the board sooner or later, and Nebraska's got to continue to work on that.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, you mentioned a couple times sort of the limitations of the offense, which I don't think any reasonable person could argue with you. But I'm curious what you kind of attribute that to? Because there are a lot of sort of variables on the offensive side of the ball right now, whether it's, top 2 running backs being out, 2 of the top 3 wide receivers being out. Obviously, the original starting quarterback is out. There's been some guys being banged up on the offensive line as well. I mean, how much of the limitations do you think are due to personnel issues from injury standpoint, from personnel issues from, hey, Nebraska maybe just has never had the guys this year that were going to be a real high-powered offense? And how much of it do you maybe think is either schematic or play calling?
I think most of it's personnel related. I think certainly Nebraska would be a better offense if Marcus Washington, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, Xavier Betts were all on the field. I think Nebraska would be a better team if it had 3 running backs instead of, or 4 instead of 2. Emmett Johnson appears to be the second guy. Emmett had a couple of good runs.
Mm-hmm.
I know he fumbled the ball, but I think he also had a couple of good runs. So, I think, sure, if they had more personnel, it'd be better. I think that the challenge with an offense like this is, again, they want to run power, so they're often out there in 12 personnel, or sometimes in 22 or 21, but a lot of times the fullback functions as a tight end in the backfield, even if it's Bonner.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just takes time to learn how to run this offense. It's a power-based offense. You have to learn how to block. Your running backs have to learn the difference between what a zone, running the zone and running a gap play. There's a lot of pre-snap shifts and trades and all these other things. It's an intricate kind of system. What you're trying to do when you're doing that, by the time you get set and it's time to run the football play, you kind of have a pretty good idea of where everybody's going. It looks real pretty when it works. You have an idea of where everybody's going, and the defense is trying to figure that out for a half second and hope that you hit something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes time. I would describe it as a big play offense, and big play offenses usually have pretty good play design. Look at the 49ers last night, for example. Look at the Dolphins, which run pretty much the same offense. They run it with some better players than the 49ers at receiver, but they run pretty much the same stuff. They're actually designed to hit big plays. People might think it's a grinding out offense, but that's actually the no huddle up tempo thing where you're running the same zone play 5 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're trying to figure out how to run certain plays and get better at that stuff. The body of knowledge will build over time. We'll see where it ends up, by the end of the season, by next year, so on and so forth. I think, again, Rhule has a 3 to 5, he has a long view and a long vision window, and he knows that eventually and Marcus Satterfield knows, eventually you've got to be able to throw the football. You do. Now, Michigan's able to do what it's able to do, and good for Michigan. But when Michigan goes to the playoff, or they play Ohio State, they have to find a way to throw the football.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go into those games and throw it 12 times and think you're going to win. So, Michigan knows that, and Jim Harbaugh can throw the ball whenever he wants, and they could throw it for a lot of yards. They're really good at throwing the ball when they want. Nebraska's got to get there. They have to be able to throw it 25 to 30 times a game and feel comfortable completing 20 of those passes. And that's going to take some time, and it's probably going to take better players, and it's going to take Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd learning how to play the position, because they need to play more, especially if Marcus Washington's hurt.
Yeah, coming off a bye week, you have an extra week of healing for Jeff Sims, sounds like. So Coach Rhule's told us how comfortable he would be playing a 2-quarterback system. Now that we were speaking on this earlier, Heinrich's 3-1 in that position, maybe that's an unjust, comment just because of the situations Jeff Sims was in the first 2 weeks. But how do you feel like this offense finds a rhythm and then maybe inserts another quarterback into that, and also trying to figure it out then as well? How does that change maybe the look of what this offense could be?
Well, I'm not coach or player or former player or any of these things. What I'll say is that the concern that I had with Sims in the 7 quarters that he played was when he throws the ball, it's about 3 yards off the ground, 2 yards. I mean, he just throws a flat ball.
Yeah.
And so if he can come back and there's a layer, he's able to layer a throw, or he's able to get into a window and make a throw, that would be great. I don't know where he's at there. I think they could probably run pretty equally. Harburg may be faster at his top end speed, but I think Sims is probably very similar in his acceleration ability.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of difference between the two guys. I do think that Harburg has shown a few things throwing the football, that it's raw and there's a long ways to go, but there's things that you like. You know, there's definitely things that he hangs in the pocket a little bit, and I like that about him. And yeah, he's thrown a couple off his back foot, but he's done a pretty good job of moving around the pocket. People forget that when he was in high school, he basically ran a shotgun passing off, and he does know how to do that. There's a body of knowledge there. There is too with Sims. So, you know, maybe Sims will get back in the game and he'll look really, really good, and you'll have an interesting conversation to think about. I think, you know, we're just going to have to see. Certainly, they thought Jeff Sims was by far and away their best choice before the season, and they did that because, you know, obviously Casey Thompson left, but so did Logan Smothers. And Smothers would be a great fit for the option that they're running now. So,
yeah,
you know,
that's a good point.
And so, and he left.
And he's having a good season, it seems like.
Yeah. And they're running. It's Rich Rod's offense. So, you know, he's running it fine.
Yep.
But, you know, I think the point being that, you know, to get where they want to go, they've got to be able to throw the football. And I'm not sure what exactly they saw on film with Sims before he got here, but Sims needs to throw a ball with more touch. There's just no other way to put that. He's thrown 3 interceptions in 7 quarters where, quite frankly, the ball just was thrown on such a line that A, he didn't see the guy in front of him apparently, but B, that he just threw it right to him. And you've got to throw the ball with a little bit more touch. And Harburg's generally done that, you know, and so I think that's the area where Sims has to continue to grow. I won't surprise me if Jeff Sims gets a drive or two against Northwestern. He might even get it in the first or second quarter, but I think Harburg may have earned the opportunity to be the starter at the same time. He's played okay. He hasn't played poorly. So he hasn't been the problem. On offense, if they've had one, it hasn't been that. So I think he'll get another chance.
Sam, just kind of talking about Harburg and his progression over his 4 games as a starter, plus you mentioned the quarter at the end of Colorado there. Have you seen a noticeable progression with him as a passer? Because from my vantage point, it does seem like he's getting more comfortable throwing the football. I'm curious what you've seen in terms of his progression there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's looked okay at times. Yeah, I thought he did a nice job on the you know, get out of jail throw down there at the end zone to Washington. Threw it a little behind him, which isn't a bad thing. What you're trying to do there is get a completion. Mm-hmm. If you got to underthrow it a little bit and throw it back shoulder, you do that. I thought that was a good throw. I thought the first 3rd down throw to Fedoni, he was off his back foot a little bit, but he did a nice job there of being patient and letting Fedoni shake that guy loose, which he did, and making that throw. I thought he found a way on 4th down, the sidewinder throw to Alex Bullock. I think that's a heck of a play. Like, you, on 4th down, you do whatever you got to do. Mm-hmm. You don't worry about how pretty it looks. And he got it done, you know, and that was a good throw. So there was some moments in there where you like what you see. Again, I think that the physical components and tools are generally there. Then it just becomes a question of, can you tighten things up? Can you read defenses? Can you get some either Coleman and Lloyd to kind of accelerate their growth process, or can you get some players who, in the transfer portal for next year and all those things? Yeah, I mean, I think he's played okay, and Nebraska's got one of the least not explosive, but they're throwing for fewer yards than pretty much every team in the country. So we don't want to pretend that they're whatever. But if I look at where Ethan Kelly McManus was at the beginning of the season, and I look at where he was against Michigan, I think Harvard's caught up to him. Kelly McManus throwing 2 pick sixes against Michigan. So, I mean, I think you go into the second half of the season, the defenses are going to watch, and they're going to be like, all right, here's how we're going to get this guy. And so Harvard's going to have to pay attention to that, and we'll see where it goes. But I think he's doing okay, and I think he'll continue to develop.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald joins us every Monday. Sam, we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
That's our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Some really interesting stuff there. There is a topic I want to get to that he touched on briefly, right, when we were talking about Jeff Sims and Heinrich Haarberg. And it's a thing that I'm utterly fascinated by. And it's how you have these guys in your, whether it's your quarterback room or wherever, right? You have these guys on your team, in your room, and you don't understand what you have, right? And I think there's some of that here with Haarberg. There's definitely like the Brock Purdy thing blows my mind, right? Not just because I'm a 49ers fan, but I think anybody who's, likes the NFL and paying attention to the NFL dreams of that situation for their team, right? Where they draft a nobody pick, right? Whether it's in the third round like the Seahawks got with Russell Wilson, whether it's in the sixth round like the Patriots got with Tom Brady. Not saying Brock Purdy's on those guys' level yet. I mean, he's probably better than Russell Wilson is right now. Or Mr. Irrelevant the way Brock Purdy was. I'm fascinated by this idea of, and part of it's because I coached for a long time, and I kind of sit here wondering to myself, like, did I have one of those guys on my team that I just didn't play?
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this though is like, was Brock Purdy really that irrelevant though? Like, he had a great career at Iowa State.
He did. Like, but he was totally forgotten about as an NFL prospect.
100%. But like when you look at what he did at Iowa State and like just the belief he brought, I feel, to that program, like when you look at his long list of like awards and honors at Iowa State, like it just keeps going. It just keeps going. Like it just keeps going. And like almost 4,000 passing yards in his senior year, like had a pretty,
I mean, he took Iowa State to a Fiesta Bowl.
I was just going to say
Iowa State.
And by the way, like a Fiesta Bowl offensive MVP. Like I understand, like, when those things don't translate. Like you can have a great college quarterback and it just doesn't make sense in the NFL.
A lot of times.
But I feel like to watch it pay off the way it has before, I feel like it was kind of like, okay, like I'm happy that he's getting the opportunity because like we did see flashes of this at Iowa State. Like it is crazy. Like you see them do great in their college career, and then we consider them forgotten, and then they go and do what they did at college on an NFL field, and it's like, well, I guess we had seen some of this.
Maybe we should have known.
Maybe we should have. Maybe just, I don't know, take it for what its true face value was.
I want to get more into that coming up next. We will have more of the show for you here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.